Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday night, time for Food Addiction Reset TV. I am Joan Ifland. I am a doctor of addictive nutrition, and I am the lead editor of the book Processed Food Addiction, which is an encyclopedia of processed food addiction. It's a textbook. It's very thoroughly grounded in literally 2,000 research studies. And I am the host of your show, Hidden in Plain Sight Food Addiction. So, as many of you know, this show is dedicated to sharing information that is otherwise just not available in media. We all know that media is quite dependent on the processed food industry for its revenues, and they're just not really interested in sharing information that would help us give up processed foods, that would help us recover from processed foods. So you've got to come here. You've got to come to Hidden in Plain Sight Food Addiction to get information about the real information, the true information about processed foods. So tonight we do have a controversial show. We are going to talk about the dangers of sodas, soda pop, sugary soda pop, and artificially sweetened soda pop. The rate at which people around the world drink soda is just astonishing. Gallons and gallons and gallons. And if you have soda in your refrigerator or in your garage, you are going to be rethinking soda by the end of this program. Now, one of the reasons I was moved to record this was because I put up a post at our Big Food Addiction Education Facebook group, which you are welcome to join, about sodas versus cigarettes. And I got a lot of pushback. People were just outraged that I might suggest that sodas were worse than cigarettes. And of course, people were pushing back because they had lost somebody to cigarettes. So they thought, how could soda be worse than cigarettes? You know, my beloved friend, family member died from cigarettes, and sodas are not that bad. They are. They are. So I always work from the evidence. I always want my viewers to see the studies. I want the members of my addiction reset community to understand the research. We talked a lot today in the addiction reset community about why this is not our fault. It is the science that helps us understand that. So today, normally we would review a few studies here and there. Today we are going to review 9 studies specifically on what sodas do to us. So I'm very, very glad you're here. Stay tuned. I'm just delighted to be able to get the word out on this. And of course, to give you the foundation, the solid foundation, so that you can go and help other people. So we just know that spreading the word has really brought down dangerous products in the past. We know that not all corporations are in integrity as they produce their products. We see recalls all the time. We see products that were manufactured incorrectly being recalled, etc. So we do, as a country, we do need to talk about this. We do need to get with our friends and families, our colleagues, our neighbors, and spread the word. But I'm not going to ask you to do that until we've walked through the evidence. So let's get started. In my first segment here, my first 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about a really interesting report in a dental journal. So this is a dentist doing research and reporting on it to other dentists. So he's talking about a particular kind of tooth decay that is associated with drug addiction. Okay, so what he's saying is you really can't know what kind of tooth decay you have until you ask your patient what kind of drug abuser they are. I just thought this was such an interesting approach to tooth decay. So he said the tooth decay from methamphetamine use and the tooth decay from crack cocaine use and the tooth decay from soda use look very similar. And he said, so you have to ask, and then you have to counsel your patient about giving up either the meth, the crack cocaine, or the soda. Now, this is coming from a dentist, and this is obviously a very caring dentist. And, this is not a dentist who's going to pretend like things are not happening. He's not going to gloss over that the person in his chair or her chair might need some real help, might need some help connecting the dots between their mouth health and their drug use or their soda use. Now, I don't know if that's astonishing to you, that sodas and meth and cocaine, crack cocaine, would each create the kind of decay in our mouth that would be indistinguishable from one another. But as a professional in the field of processed food addiction, I'm always looking for that evidence. I'm always looking for that evidence that what we are dealing with is drug addiction. They are drugs that have been made to look like food. They've been marketed to us as if they were food, but they're actually drugs. Now, there's quite a bit of evidence in the brain. In brain imaging studies, researchers see very clearly that processed foods do to the brain what drugs do, recreational drugs. They kick up the craving pathways, they kick up the stress pathways, and they pull the energy from all of our rational thinking, our breaks, our restraint. Drugs do that, and processed foods do that. So I think in all the evidence, the evidence from the brain is most compelling. But I have to say, I am going to remember this study showing that meth, crack cocaine, and sodas create the same kind of deterioration, the same kind of decay in our teeth, because I think that's pretty interesting evidence that we are, in fact, dealing with a drug problem, and it's not a food problem. So I do want to recognize Sheila Yount, who is the producer of Food Addiction Reset TV. And what she has posted here next to me is the exact title from the study. So I'm not asking you to go around and share just hearsay, or I heard somebody say, or I think No, we are going to the original research, and that is the exact title of the study. Dental erosion due to abuse of illicit drugs and acidic carbonated beverages. So they think that it's the acid in the sodas that actually causes the erosion. Now, we also know that when you get a high level of circulating sugar in your blood, that the sugar is attacking the teeth from the inside. Because teeth, of course, the blood does circulate up through the tooth. If it's high in sugar, it actually erodes the tooth from the inside. Now you're thinking, who cares? I go to the dentist, I get the filling. Well, first of all, it's expensive. Second of all, it's painful. I mean, even if you do have the anesthetic, the sound and the feel of a tooth being drilled is just horrible. So what really breaks my heart here, of course, is I always go to the children. I mean, getting a tooth filled for a child can be traumatic, very painful. All the noise and the smell. It's a bad experience. So every time I see somebody giving a soda to a child now, I'm going to be thinking, okay, learning disabilities, obesity, fatty liver, And now I will have to be adding and tooth decay and the trauma and pain of getting a tooth filled. So go ahead. Go ahead. Now, don't do this. I'm going to give you a little bit of coaching at the end about how to talk about sodas. So I'll just wait until the end. Okay. Now, I do want to encourage people to sign up for our newsletter, which you can do at our website, www.foodaddictionreset.com. www.foodaddictionreset.com. You can go there and you can sign up for the newsletter. I would encourage you to do that, to get the newsletter into your email. You're quiet, you're in front of your computer, you can open up the newsletter, and then we have links to the studies. So if you want to read a summary of the study, if you really want to get this deep on the inside, you can link and you can read studies for yourself. Okay, yes, there's a lot of statistics in them, but you can always just drop down to the conclusion, and you can generally read in plain English what the researchers found. So you don't have to depend on me. You don't have to depend on distorting media. You don't have to depend on your health professional. You can go straight to the research yourself. And I encourage you to do so. I think it's very empowering to be able to read research. So just know that if you click on a newsletter at foodaddictionreset.com, I always have a link to the study or the article that I'm reviewing, and you can read it for yourself. Okay, is that exciting or what? Yes, science. Okay, now here's the next one. This has to do with menstruation in girls. So what the study found was sodas with caffeine and artificial sweeteners are associated with early menstruation in 11-year-old girls. So this is girls who are menstruating before age 11. And this is a hardship. And you can read the title of the study right on the screen. Consumption of caffeinated and artificially sweetened beverages, soft drinks, is associated with early menarche, which just means early menstruation. That's the onset of menstruation, menarche. So this is, you think, well, gee, is that really such a big deal? Yes, it is, because early menstruation is associated with asthma, it's associated with depression, and it's associated with diabetes. So it's really a good idea to let little girls, young girls, pre-adolescent girls, just mature through their cycles naturally and normally, and without the stimulation of caffeinated or artificially sweetened beverages. So if you're thinking, wow, I do have that in my home, wow, I let my preteen drink that, and you're thinking, well, it's better than those sugary sodas, we're finding out that artificial sweeteners are in fact not better than sugar. That is just like the tobacco companies saying, oh, low-char cigarettes are better than regular cigarettes. They're really safe to use now. It's an exact parallel. We remember that the tobacco industry took control of processed foods in the late 1980s and began really profoundly deceptive advertising. So diet drinks are not safer than sugary drinks. They may harm us in different ways, but they are also very harmful. You might recall that last week we did talk about how diet sodas actually do make us gain weight. They make the brain think that there's sugar in our bloodstream, and so the brain signals the pancreas to go get all of the glucose in our bloodstream and put it into fat cells. Now, so then at that point, not only are we fatter, but we also have low blood sugar, which just makes us crazy. So that is a myth, which I would like to bust right here, right now. Artificially sweetened sodas are associated with diabetes and weight gain. So the missing calories, your brain doesn't actually know they're missing until it's too late. The brain just gets that very concentrated sweet taste in the mouth, and boom, it sets off that cascade of events where the sugar ends up in your fat cells, and you have low blood sugar. So that, I hope that we really get that clear, especially for food addicts. That concentrated taste from artificial sweeteners is very stimulating to our addictive pathways. So it doesn't help. It doesn't help to go to artificially sweetened beverages or other sweets, treats. It's just making it worse. Okay, so we're clear on that now. Don't let your kids have sodas. Yep. Okay, so now here's another heartbreaker, which is that women who drink artificially sweetened beverages during pregnancy give birth early term. So they give birth too early. So that baby doesn't even get to stay in the womb and fully develop and have a normal delivery. They know that women who drink diet sodas during pregnancy tend to give birth too early. That's really sad. When you think about the stress on the baby and the mother from early term, that's just incredibly dry. Just sad, sad, sad. And when with alcohol and with cigarettes, there are warning labels, right? Pregnant women should not be ingesting these. There are even warning labels on menus now for seafood, raw seafood, or undercooked seafood, and pregnant women. There are all kinds of warnings. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, why are there not warnings on diet sodas and sodas? And the answer just goes back to the power of the soda companies. We had a report of some weeks ago on how a soda company, the soda industry, prevented the California legislature from passing legislation specifically on warning labels on sodas. So that is how powerful the soda industry is. And I will tell you, honestly, for me, that was the moment when I decided to really focus on educating the public about sodas. Because yes, it did make the papers that the soda industry was able to do that. But I thought, gosh, we really need to get the word out. We really need to get the word out. So I am arming you. I'm giving you ammunition. I'm giving you weapons with which to help spread the word about sodas. So just in our first 3 studies, we showed that tooth decay from soda looks like tooth decay from meth and crack cocaine. We saw that it's associated with early menarche in girls, young girls, and that it's associated with early deliveries in pregnant women. So let's just pause here for a minute. Let me do kind of station identification. I am Dr. Joan Ifland, if you're joining us late. I am the editor of the textbook, Processed Food Addiction. My doctorate is in addictive nutrition. I've studied this closely, looking at literally somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 studies for the textbook. And we're talking about a very real disease, which is hidden in plain sight. We don't get to read about it. We don't get to hear programs about it, except right here on Food Addiction TV. I want to recognize our producer, Sheila Yount. And I also, in our first commercial, I would like to talk about a book which I wrote for you. It is Dr. Ifland's Meal Prep Manual. So I wrote this because on Facebook once I asked the question, what holds you back from recovery from food addiction? And the biggest answer was cooking. I don't have time to cook. I don't have the money to cook. I don't know how to do it. So those are two other urban myths that are, I think, promulgated by the processed food industry. It doesn't take any time to cook. It takes less time to cook than it does to drive through a fast food restaurant. I'm serious. You do all your baking, all your cooking on the weekend, and then during the week, you're assembling these beautiful plates of pre-cooked food. You're packing them into containers to take to your workplace, and it just takes minutes. It takes less time than driving through for fast food. It certainly takes less time than waiting for the delivery of something absolutely awful. So the time issue, no, it does. It's very quick. Cooking is very quick. And then the cost issue is just ridiculous. As anybody who has ever looked at their credit card, any food addict who's ever looked at their credit card, they can just see the charges for those runs to the grocery store, the runs to the fast food outlets, the restaurants, the binging. All of that really adds up to hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So is a plate of beans and rice and carrots, that truly costs $1. But that really costs $1 because once you eat that, you're satisfied and you're not going to eat again before your next meal or before you go to bed. So it's truly $1. Now, the dollar meals that are sold in fast food restaurants they should be labeled $1 now and hundreds of dollars later. Because by the time you've paid for the food that we're compelled to eat, because that dollar meal is an addictive meal, and it is designed to just set us up for cravings. They're happy to sell that for $1 because they know that you will come back and spend more and more and more, and you'll be sick from it. So by the time you've spent on the foods that you have bought as a result of the cravings and the medical conditions, well, not to mention that $1 fast food meal is going to make you so tired that even if you wanted a promotion, you wouldn't have the energy or the confidence to apply for it, or that it's going to erode your joints and you will be immobile and go on disability. So that dollar meal is just the tip of a whole iceberg on a mountain of expenses. So this book is very simply laid out. The meals are gorgeous. Real food is absolutely gorgeous. The colors and textures and shapes and tastes are just delightful. But you do have to know what to do, and you can make all your food for the week in a couple of hours on the weekends. So please do check out this book at Amazon. It's a lifesaver, literally a lifesaver. People have told me many times over the years they wish that they had grown up in a household where all the food for the week was cooked in 2 hours on the weekends. They wish they had that skill set this whole time, because they know that it would have actually prevented suffering from the consequences of processed foods. All right, so there's the book. Go check it out. Go to Amazon, just put in Ifland, food addiction, and you will come to that book, plus, of course, the textbook. All right, now let us go on to our next segment. Now, this is something I bet most people don't know. This was a study done in postmenopausal women who drank more than 2 diet sodas a day. So that was the study population. And what they found is that group of women were more likely to have heart problems, heart trouble, heart disease. And we just go back to how callous industry is about women and heart disease. We go back to Fen-Phen. I don't know if you remember that weight loss medication, but it was pulled from the market because it caused memory problems in women, and it caused heart disease. It caused heart damage in women. So we know that industry is very callous. They don't care if they cause heart disease in women. So here's the title of the study: Association of Soda Consumption with Subclinical Cardiac Remodeling. So that's just the heart being pushed into a shape, the shape of disease. And the Framingham Heart Study has been going on for decades. It's based in the town of Framingham, Massachusetts. They collect unbelievable amounts of data. People actually go back every 2 years and they go to a physical examination. And even if they move away, they send in their data. So it's an unbelievable collection of data, just really top-notch research. Now, here's a very interesting comment about this particular study. It's a correlational study. So they're just looking at this data. This group of people has more heart disease than that group of people, and they drink more sodas. That's a correlational study. They didn't say, okay, let's give this group sodas and see if they develop heart disease, and this group doesn't get this. No, it's not. That's a causation study. So the researchers make a very good point. They say, because this is a correlational study, we don't know if it's the soda, because this group also shows up with overweight and diabetes. So what they're really saying in the study is that soda use correlates with overweight and diabetes. These are diet sodas. So they didn't know that they were going to have a study that shows a relationship between diet sodas and diabetes and diet sodas and overweight. But in fact, their study really shows that there's a constellation. There's a group of diseases that are associated with diet sodas. So it's not just heart disease, it's also diabetes and overweight. So isn't that the supreme irony, that a product which is sold as a weight loss product causes weight gain through that mechanism that we just talked about, the blood glucose mechanism, blood sugar? The body thinks there's this big surge of blood sugar, so it hurries around, takes all the blood sugar out of the system and puts it into fat cells, when in fact there is no extra sugar there. It's a deception even for our pancreas, and it does, it just wears out our insulin function, which is how you develop diabetes. Your insulin just stops working because the receptors on the fat cells just wear out, and so you're left with that very high blood sugar. Okay, and we know where that goes, right? If you have constant high blood sugar, then the very smallest capillaries in the body are bursting because the blood is literally too thick. So it bursts the capillaries in the back of the eye, in the retina, and that's why diabetics go blind. And it bursts the capillaries in the kidneys. That's why we get kidney failure. And it bursts the capillaries in the extremities, which is why people have their feet amputated. So this is not small stuff. I know I was accused out in food addiction education once of fear mongering. This is just the research. It's not me making stuff up. But I do think that the research is fearful. It's very scary. Okay, now, of course, we're going to talk about cancer. So how could diet sodas be associated with cancer? Well, it turns out that because sugar is a mold inhibitor, and there's no sugar in diet sodas, So they have to put something in there to stop the mold. I'm sorry, I'm on kidney disease. Oh, yes. Sorry. So the benzene is linked to the benzene that they put into the soda to inhibit mold growth is linked to cancer. And that's just something else that we know. Okay, so it's Sheila did put up the right study. It's in this. It's mentioned in a study of how this leads to also to kidney disease. So people who are diagnosed with kidney disease were found to have used diet sodas more often than people who did not. Okay, so we've got cancer on the list, and now we have kidney disease on the list. Now, here's the next piece, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's, literally losing your mind towards the end of your life and not being able to remember your loved ones. I don't know, does it get worse? But people, just because so many people are developing Alzheimer's, it's now accepted. But it's very preventable. And one great thing to do to prevent it is just not to drink sodas. Okay, now here's a related problem, which is that sodas are either sold in plastic bottles or they're sold in cans that have a plastic lining. And that plastic migrates into the beverage so that when we drink it, that plastic mimics a hormone and it messes up our thyroid. And when our thyroid is messed up, our hormones are messed up. So this is yet another reason, another great reason not to drink sodas. Okay. Now we do have this enormous question is, what do we do? What do we do? We have a government that has completely abdicated its responsibility to keep harmful products from us. You guys know that my undergraduate degree is in political science and economics, and I have an MBA from Stanford, which, okay, I did earn it in 1978, but I do understand corporate behavior. And when I finished my MBA, I went to work for a Fortune 200 corporation. It was a holding company. I worked in their corporate headquarters. At one time, I was assistant to the chief operating officer and chief financial officer in my short but terrific career there. I left when my children were born. But I can tell you that corporations don't care. So I remember one of the companies that was held by the company that I worked for was a canning company. And they wanted to line their cans with plastic. And the FDA was just giving them all kinds of a hard time about it. They really weren't sure, and the company kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and they just didn't care. They didn't care about the safety. They just knew that if they could line those cans with plastic, that the content of the can would stay on the shelf longer. Well, that makes the can more valuable. That increases profits for the canning company. They just didn't care. I remember them going into a meeting, the people who were working on the plastic lining of the can, and they were all excited because the FDA had moved one step closer to approving it. They just didn't care. So now we know, then this is many years later, 40 years later, 40 years later, that that plastic lining interferes with our hormones. It interferes with our ability to get pregnant. It interferes with our ability to lead happy, joyful, healthy lives. So these corporations just don't care. We have to protect ourselves. And I'm very, very happy. Most people know that we closed the registration for the August session of our Addiction Reset community. We closed it last night. And thank you to Sheila Yount for doing an incredibly good job with that. And we got a group of people into safety, into the Addiction Reset community. The Addiction Reset community is an online community which we have 3 hours a day of video meetups and conference calls, and it works. So when you get around people who are already doing what you want to do, there's a part of the brain called the mirror neurons. I call them the radar neurons. And they just keep us safe by saying, do what the people around you are doing. So when you're around healthy people, you do what they're doing, and the whole recovery process becomes much easier. So here we are, we're in this situation. It's just a situation. We're in a situation where corporations do not have to tell the truth about their products. And they can market these very cheap products that are very, very damaging. They're cheap to make. They sell them at a cheap price. They're absolutely everywhere. You just see the parallels between soda and cigarettes. Sodas are sold in vending machines. They're very, very cheap. And it doesn't take very much for them to become addictive. We've talked about this study again and again, where a researcher fed a 25% sugar solution to rats over 7 days. It only took 7 days for the addictive part of the brain to start hyperactivating. So for the brain to start to adapt to this substance, a sugar, in an addictive way. 7 servings in 7 days. So we know these substances are highly addictive, and now because of this program today, we know about a number of consequences, particularly related to pregnancies, to girls and their early menstruation, to cancer, to kidney disease, to heart disease, to diabetes, to overweight. It's bad. It's really bad. So please, I would just ask you to sit quietly and ask yourself, how can I help with this situation? Well, obviously tell people about the TV show, but don't bring it up when people are actually using the substance, because that just turns them off. That just puts the barrier up between you and them. Wait until you can just work it into the conversation. I have decided to give up sodas, and I feel so much better. I do hear that again and again in the 22 years that I have been doing this. Any number of times, even before people have done one thing about their food, they'll say, you know what, I gave up sodas and I feel so much better. It's because sodas have that rapid absorption. They're already liquid. They're not going to go through a breaking down process. They're going to go right through the stomach and into the intestines and into your bloodstream. So that's one of the reasons why they are so much. I know you're going to be surprised that I'm saying anything is more dangerous than processed foods. Processed drinks, sweetened beverages, artificially sweetened beverages, carbonated beverages are worse than processed foods because they are a liquid. So you might say, oh, well, it won't make any difference. This person is never going to change. Why would I risk the ridicule? Oh, like the ridicule that I got in food addiction education. Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm quitting this group. Sodas are not more dangerous than cigarettes. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They're given to children. They have a lot more different consequences, and the consequences are severe, and they do include death. So people do die from complications of diabetes. They certainly die from heart disease. They die from cancer. And those are the diseases now that are prevalent in our culture. So processed foods have now overtaken cigarettes as a global cause of death. So processed foods kill more people every year than cigarettes. Yeah. So you're going to be okay if you say to somebody, wow, sodas, I've just learned that sodas are really dangerous. Maybe you will be scoffed at, but you know what? You're here with us and we get it. And you can just come back here and you can go into food addiction education and you can post about it. And we will put our arms around you and we will say, well, aren't we lucky that we know better? So every time somebody tells you that what you're saying is ridiculous, just say to yourself, oh, thank goodness I know better. And don't get pulled into their ridicule or their meanness or their short-sightedness. But I think they do deserve our compassion because they will continue to use these very dangerous sodas and it will hurt them. They will suffer. They might suffer irritability. I remember 22 years ago deciding to give up caffeine because I tied it to irritability. I tied it to yelling at my kids. Caffeine makes us irritable. It makes some people rage. And I wouldn't do anything that would make me irritable with my kids. So just know you can just say for that person, I not say, but in your mind, think, I am extending compassion to you because not only will you suffer, but the people around you will suffer from your temper, from your irritability, from your fatigue, from your depression. And so just leave it at that. Just leave it at that. They say something, oh, that's ridiculous. And you say, well, thank you for at least listening. And drop it. Short, short, short. Because you have planted a seed in that person. Now, we're reading a book in the Addiction Reset community, which is absolutely fascinating, called Connected. And we read this past week or late last week about this concept of seeding a network, planting seeds in a network. It's a wonderful image. And it does make a difference, especially if you plant seeds among different people in your network. So if you say to like 2 different people in your office, oh, I learned that sodas are connected to cancer and diabetes and overweight, then that person might repeat it to somebody else. And so somebody else might hear it from 2 different people. And you see how it multiplies. It's called seeding, seeding, seeding a network. So just carry that image in your mind and just think, I could really save lives. I could save a lot of suffering. I could do a lot of good in the world by telling people about the dangers of soda. Okay. Now, I do want to make one other point. I'm going to do a really brief station identification. I am Dr. Joan Ifland. I am a doctor of addictive nutrition, one of 2 on the planet. And I am the lead editor of the Processed Food Addiction textbook, which some people tell me makes me the leading expert in food addiction in the world. That's okay. People can say that about me. I don't care. I mean, I don't mind. So the program is Hidden in Plain Sight, Food Addiction. It is a production of Food Addiction Reset TV, which is produced by Sheila Yount. Okay. So one of the things that I think we really take away from tonight's episode is how much addiction to processed foods and drinks is not our fault. So we do expect our government to protect us. We have this, it's not an unreasonable expectation that manufacturers of products would test their products before they sell them to us. Now, does the soda industry know about these consequences? Of course they do. They have scientists on their staffs, but those scientists are dedicated to making the products addictive and to covering up the consequences. So we remember the soda company that hired scientists to proclaim that obesity is caused by lack of exercise. Well, anybody in recovery from processed foods knows that obesity is caused by processed foods. So it was tragically successful. And you still find people today who think that lack of exercise is the leading cause of obesity. It's not. Of course it's not. So when you really get into the depth of the deception, there's absolutely no way you can blame yourself for developing a diet soda addiction or soda addiction. The product is marketed deceptively and it's highly, highly addictive. So in a soda, not only do you have caffeine and sugar, but you often have salt. And we don't even know what else is in a soda because they're not required to tell us. So this is kind of an extension of my basic advice, which is don't buy anything in a package. Don't buy anything that has a label. You know, celery is not in a package and it doesn't have a label. So buy the celery. It's an intact plant. It looks just like it did when it came out of the ground. And that is a relatively safe product. So it's one of my big goals in everything I do, which is to let people know that loss of control over food and drink is not your fault. I cannot tell you how many times people have said to me, you know, I'd like to give up sodas, but I can't. I'm really trying, but I can't. I get to 10 o'clock and I've got to have one. I tried to get through one day and I had such a bad headache. I had to start again the next day. So, you know what that sounds like? It sounds like, wow, I'm trying to quit smoking, but I can't. So people were marketed cigarettes without ever any indication that they were highly addictive and associated with an early death. And this is cigarettes all over again. And people don't know how addicted they are until they go to stop, and they can't stop. So just really get that parallel. Get that parallel. Nobody ever called me up and said, oh, I'd like for you to start smoking. I think you'll really enjoy it. It'll give you lung cancer and asthma for life, and you won't be able to stop when you want to. Nobody ever called me up. You know, I just saw my parents smoking. I saw my friends in high school smoking, and I started to smoke. Even though I probably started to smoke in 1964, which is the same year that the Surgeon General came out with the warning that cigarettes are associated with cancer, or tobacco is. But of course, an addict doesn't hear that. An addict doesn't hear a warning. So certainly if you're a parent, your children are depending on you. They don't have anybody else to protect them. Their school is going to be handing out soda. The government is going to allow soda machines in the schools, et cetera, et cetera. So they only have you to protect them. And I know you're not going to be in school watching them be given soda, but you can keep it out of your house. You can set the example. And things that are not available in the house, some people say, oh, children go crazy for them when they're out elsewhere. Well, that's all the more reason to keep them out of your house. If your child loses control over it outside of the house, well, then don't make it a temptation inside the house. The other thing is if your children are in schools that have soda machines in the school, don't give up. Don't give up. If you would like to start educating the administrators of a school about the dangers of having sodas in the school, just write to me and I will give you a handout. There are handouts at Food Addiction Resources, for example. There's a great handout, diseases, diet-related diseases. So it's a long list of diseases that are associated with processed foods. Yeah. Okay. Enough lecturing. I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad that you're not going to be suffering from sodas anymore. If you cannot give them up and that surprises you or it distresses you, then come to the Addiction Reset community. You can sign up for the Addiction Reset community at foodaddictionreset.com. And I don't like this word guarantee, but I'm going to use it because I see people come into the ARC, the Addiction Reset community, and do things that they have wanted to do. I have seen people come into the ARC with absolute, total, terrifying loss of control over their food, and I have seen them regain control within 24 hours. And it's just because of these mirror neurons, these radar neurons get filled up with people who are doing the right thing, and those mirror neurons just start directing their person. Oh, do this, do what they're doing. It's such a simple thing, but it's so powerful. And it is why we offer 2 hours a day of video chat. It's because those mirror neurons really love eye contact. They really respond to eye contact. So at 11 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern, we have live video chats, very much just like this, and I'm there. Then we have a conference call at 8 o'clock Eastern every day, 3 hours. This is such a severe addiction that turns out to be enough. If people start to lose control, they only have to wait a few more hours until there's a video chat or a conference call, and then people can hang on. So if you are trying to give up diet soda, if you are trying to give up juice, because juice is highly addictive, if you are trying to give up sugary sodas, or if you're trying to get them out of your household, but you have household members who are fighting you on it, you need to get a band of warriors around you. You need to get people who really care about you and are really smart and are really consistent, reliable. They're every day, 3 hours a day, to help you develop strategies for protecting your children and your loved ones. So do look for us at foodaddictionreset.com. We would love to see you there. All right, guys, it's the end of the show. I hate to leave you. I'm so grateful that you came, and I will see you next week. So we do this once a week. All of our shows are listed also at YouTube. So if you put IFLAND, Food Addiction Reset TV in, you will see that our wonderful producer, Sheila Yount, has put them all into a playlist. And so another thing that you can do if you are struggling with food is just go to YouTube, put in IFLAND, Food Addiction Reset TV, and binge watch. I hate that word binge, but just watch one TV show after another TV show after another TV show for as long as it takes until your mirror neurons are filled with, I want to eat healthy. Look, this person is eating healthy. She understands. She knows they're dangerous. I want to do what she's doing. So just expose your mirror neurons, your radar neurons to Food Addiction Reset TV, and that will get you a long way. That will really help calm the cravings in your brain and get you to a safe place where you get control over your food. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. I've really enjoyed our time together. I care about you so much. I think about how to reach you every day. I'm desperate for your suffering to stop. I should also mention that we are starting to work with some medical curriculum writers. So these are PhDs who write courses for residents, for doctors, for medical students. They're rabidly interested in food addiction, and we have started to write medical curriculum. So maybe by next January, we'll have a curriculum for you for health coaches so that you can be a food addiction health coach. So do stay tuned for announcements on that. It's a very, very cool development. We're working night and day to help you. Sheila Yount and I, we work night and day to help you, literally. All the members of the ARC think about you. We want you to recover. We want you to be safe. And we're working hard for you. So have a good week. We will see you next week. And we'll see you out in Food Addiction Education, our Facebook group. You're welcome to ask questions there. I'm there quite a few times a day. Sheila's there also, and we are there to answer your questions and really lift you up so that you can beat this disease. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.